Big news. I've retired from services. Yeah, I no longer have a social media management agency. And in this episode, I'm going to talk through that change, how I came to that decision, how I continued to market my business through it all, and what's next for me. I'm going to also share some lessons learned so that you can get some insights. But my hope is, well, if you're anything like me, you just like being nosy. And also, I hope that it inspires and encourages those of you who are also marketing your business as you're pivoting as well. So let's get into the episode. This is the Mindful Marketing Podcast, episode 321. I'm on a mission to help you connect more, scroll less, and grow together. This episode is brought to you by Sked Social. If you want to give your brand a little glow up with Sked Social, it plays nice with tools like Canva, and your branding stays on point across all of your multiple social media platforms. Plus, Sked Social totally understands that switching from one tech tool to another can be kind of a nightmare. So they're letting you just jump in now and pay later when your current contract is up. No strings, just vibes, terms apply. Click the link in the show notes for details. All right, so let's talk about marketing through a pivot. And I want to talk through my pivot because I tried to put a date on it. And I think the date that I knew that I needed to pivot was when the retreat happened last year, the Savvy Social Retreat. That was in November last year. But really, this all started the second I got pregnant. And I was talking to one of my mentees about this in the mentorship program. And she was like, Andrea, I feel like you need to do a lessons learned episode or a things I was wrong about when it comes to babies episode, because there was a lot of things that I assumed would happen when I had a kid that went differently. And then especially my second kid totally rocked my world, changed my life. Like my first kid, I got pregnant in 2021. I had her in 2022. So really, ever since I got pregnant with her in 2021, I've been on this pivoting journey. The second that I knew I was pregnant, my morning sickness, which lasted all day, knocked me out. Like I thought I would have time, right? My husband and I tried to get pregnant intentionally for probably about 9 months before she was born. And I figured the whole time in the back of my mind is like, you know, when I get pregnant, then it'll be like a 9-month runway before things change in my business. No, the second I got pregnant, my exhaustion went up, my energy went way down, and I was nauseous all day. So I had to change the level of input in my business. Okay. So thing number one, baby one came along. She's great. She was actually a very easy baby. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I just had it easy. I was like, what is everyone complaining about? She didn't really sleep through the night, but she would just wake up. I'd feed her a bottle. She'd go right back to sleep. Very like stoic baby. She did laugh a lot too, but she didn't really cry. Even when she went and got shots at the doctor kind of thing, the doctor would be like, oh, she's not really crying. She'd do a little like, and then be over it in a second. That was her, right? So my husband and I, around 15 months, which is a magical age, by the way, around 15 months, especially if you have a girl, 15 months, we were like, we should try again. The second we had that thought, I was pregnant again with baby two. So 15 months into having baby one, pregnant again with baby two. For context too, 2022, the year that I had my oldest daughter, was my best year in business ever. Like I'm talking, we almost had $900,000 of revenue that year. Okay. So I was living large. I was like, this is great. I can run an agency. I can run the Savvy Social School. I can run a mentorship. I'm speaking. I'm doing the podcast. I'm doing YouTube videos. It's all fine. And I was doing all of that on 20 hours a week. We had about 20-ish clients in the agency. I had about 10 team members. Okay. Life was great. Then as soon as I got pregnant with my second kid, same thing happened. I was expecting it to take some time, because it took some time with the first one. Plus I had a retreat that winter that I've been planning for over a year. But I got pregnant on purpose, but it was like it happened 3 seconds after we thought about it. And second baby, same thing, morning sickness just all day, nauseous all day, energy levels completely depleted. So again, I had to adjust my schedule, my input to be able to manage that. Okay. So I'm giving all this context to lead up to the decision of pivoting in my business. because it wasn't from a place of inspiration. And I think that marketers like myself, we try to paint the glossy picture of, oh, I woke up one day and I was inspired to change my business. And that can happen to some people. But I think most of us make changes because we have to. Like we literally have to in our business. And I had to in this instance, though I became inspired through the process. Okay. So the first thing that caused me to want to pivot is my babies. I love them, but my second baby was very challenging for me. She was, I'm going to say it, kind of colicky the first 2 months. She's definitely mellowed out now. She's 5 months old, mellowed out now, but she's a needier baby. So she needs lots of attention. She wants lots of hugs. She wants lots of cuddles, especially from mama, which is cute and frustrating at the same time. And on top of all that, I now have a very vivacious 2-year-old who is nothing like she was a baby. Like baby years easy, she's making up for it as a toddler. Literally the other day, she took paper towels out of my hand, threw them on the floor, then turned and smiled to me and said, "Pick it up, mommy." And I was like, am I being bullied? But I can't help her cute little face. Okay. So babies totally changed the way that I do business. The second thing that shifted my perspective on a lot of things was the retreat. Being in the room with some really smart freaking business owners, we're all talking, we're all masterminding about our business. And the idea for me that kept coming up is that I have found my enough spot. I could very clearly see what a large agency would look like, double the client list, get more team members, be really aggressive with marketing, do a speaking circuit. I could see that vision for myself. And at the same time, my life perspective, my personal values have shifted because of my family. I suddenly didn't want to do those things, even though I could see the future and I could see that I could do them. It would come at the sacrifice of my family. And I didn't want to do that. Plus, I was in the very early stages of growing our family. And as much as even if I wanted to do that, my capacity at that time, I couldn't do it. In January of 2024, I decided to close the Savvy Social School to new members. And I released that episode here on the podcast. You can scroll back and take a listen to it. I released the episode, I released the update to my members, and then a couple months later released it on the podcast. And the idea was that I didn't have enough time to focus on marketing that product. So I was just going to focus on delivering it. For any of you who have a membership, you know that most of the work is in delivering the product, right? So I quietly retired. I shifted some of our programming to be more asynchronous to fit my lifestyle, okay? And to fit my growing family. In April of 2024, I celebrated 10 years in business and I rebranded this podcast. It went from being the Savvy Social podcast to the Mindful Marketing podcast. And a lot of this came from the conversations I was having at the Savvy Social retreat. It felt to me at the time, and it still does to this day, it felt like a significant shift in my perspective on this business by renaming it. And I'm very happy with that decision. And it, to me, signifies the future of where this business is going. My people have identified themselves as a group that's not hustle all the time, that's not go, push all the time, that's not wake up at 6 a.m., go to bed at 3 a.m., and survive off 3 hours of sleep. Like, we have kids, we have families, we have responsibilities, we're seeking a cozier lifestyle. One of the people I was talking to is like, she doesn't have kids or even a family, but she's gardening. Like, she wants to do her thing for a couple hours a day and then spend the rest of the time in her garden. And like, those are my people, right? It's like, cozy business is a buzzword that's going around, living the soft life. All of those things, those are my people. And that's really how I teach marketing anyways. I'm just labeling it. Okay. Following April, 10 years in business, rebranded the podcast. June and July were my lowest profitable months ever. Negative profit 1 month. So no profit at all for those of you listening. Negatives. I was going to say never. I think there's one other time where I had negative profit in my business. But that was 2018. 2018, I can't remember if it was actually negative or it felt negative at the time, but it was another low point in the business. And June, July this year, lowest profit ever. Okay. Then in July, I got hit with a big tax bill. And for the first time in my business, I had to use my line of credit. Okay. I'm saying all of this to set the framework for the pivot because I do think that marketers, business owners, personal brands who are selling the thing, they're always painting it like this beautiful thing, right? Oh, I changed my entire business because I woke up and felt inspired, or I just decided that this is what I wanted to do. And y'all, there are a lot of things outside of business that cause this shift. So I want to set those up. Throughout all of this, I was getting a lot of support, a ton of support from the amazing Becky Mollenkamp, who is my accountability coach, and she works inside of my programs as well. And so having that sounding board really helped me see that this wasn't like a I woke up kind of decision. I knew. It's so funny because I do these private podcasts for my mentees in the mentorship program. I talked about selling my agency a year ago. Somebody asked me what my 10-year goal was, and I sat down, I journaled about it, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think it'd be great to like build up the agency to be able to sell it. And so I was consciously, unconsciously working towards that goal. I even signed up for a bunch of mailing lists that notify you when other agencies are for sale, just to see like who's selling their agencies, how much does it cost? Like, it's so wild to me that that was the idea that I had, and it basically came true. But June, July, terrible months. I knew as soon as those months hit that I had to make a big choice because my second baby and having a toddler is a very different experience from my first. Energy levels, not the same. Also, the market shifted. And so when people talk about reasons that they pivot, sometimes they don't mention the market shifts. And as a social media agency, especially those of you in social media agencies, listen up. The market is changing for the services that we offer. We are contending with AI. As much as you don't want to think that AI is a competitor, it is, okay? Is it a great competitor? No. But the idea that it could be great is what's causing people to cut back on their marketing budgets and to use AI even more than they ever have in the past, right? So that's a huge, huge competition. The second thing is that marketing budgets are tightening. We are in an economic downturn. The bubble from the pandemic with like things like PPC loans is starting to burst, right? So businesses don't have as much cash. They're tightening their purse strings. They're pulling back on their marketing budgets. That affects agencies. It affects us differently. It doesn't mean that people aren't hiring agencies. It means different people are hiring agencies. And this is something that I talk a lot about with my mentees in the mentorship program. The same customers you were serving 4 years ago may not be the same customers that you're going to serve today. Okay. Strategies may be the same. Your selling process may be the same. All that may be the same, but who's going to be buying from you may be different. Okay. So you have to shift with the market. Okay, so those are the reasons that I pivoted. I talked about how I didn't wake up inspired, like life happened. Personal shifts were happening with my values, my family, how I viewed this whole business as like a mindful marketing company and not a social media first company. Market shifts happening, economic downturns, the rise of AI, and then also new opportunities. So here's the other side of pivots that I actually think is really positive is that while June and July were some of my lowest profit months, I had some of my best opportunities come through June and July. I hosted my first virtual summit, and it was literally the best thing ever because I was like, oh, I can just do this. I was able to leverage my 10 years in business, all of my connections. I was able to book sponsors. This wasn't even something that I considered before. And I had the idea, I executed the idea, I did it. And then I was like, I could definitely do this again and do it in a way that's more budget friendly as well. Okay. So that's a new opportunity that arose. In July, I booked 3 paid speaking gigs for later this year. They weren't on my radar. People just reached out to me. I wasn't pitching. I wasn't doing anything. Just my personal network. And then also leading into the Instagram bootcamp. We had an amazing Instagram bootcamp this year. All of those things combined, I was like, oh, this is where I should be spending my time. So I made the decision to offboard my clients. Now, in the process of all of this, I am still marketing my business. And I think as business owners, sometimes when we write the story, when we rewrite the story, it feels like, oh, we had this decision, we made this shift, and then we started marketing differently. But what is happening is I'm actually slowly shifting my marketing really over the past 9 months. Ever since the retreat in November of 2023, I have been changing my marketing slowly without even really realizing it. And I do think that as you're going through a pivot, especially as a personal brand, as soon as you start implementing things on the back end, it'll start reflecting and showing up in the front end of your business. And so as new opportunities come in, as your personal values shift, as the market shifts, you're naturally going to start shifting your marketing as well. Now, there are some challenges with marketing through a pivot. I'm going to talk about emotional first and then practical second. The emotional side to me was the hardest part. I've been doing this for 10 years. 10 years I have been a social media manager. It is a big part of my identity to offer social media services. And I know, technically speaking, you're not supposed to wrap up your identity with the work that you do, but mine is. It's very entangled in what I do, okay? I am embedded with social media marketing, and I have been doing social media services for 10 years. So it took me ever since the retreat, and Becky has notes on this because we've been talking about it for months. It took me months to come to terms with the fact that it was time to retire from services. I could tell that it was time to retire. And the analogy that really helped me through this emotionally was thinking about sports. I'm a football girly, okay? Like, I'm not a football girly in the sense that I am committed to any particular team. Right now, I'm a Bills fan. I grew up a Falcons fan, also a Dolphins fan. I'm from Miami, lived in Atlanta. I now live in Fort Erie, which is near Buffalo, New York. So by proximity, I just cheer for that team. I've also been Patriots fan over the years, mostly out of spite because everyone around me was not a Patriots fan, and then they kept winning, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go for the winning team. And then I also was a Saints fan for a long time, though I can't really tell you why I was a Saints fan, but I love the Saints. Okay. Anyways, Tom Brady is a quarterback, right? And like at the end of his career, he decided to retire. And it was celebrated. You've done a lot. You've won. You did the thing. Now you can retire. The beautiful thing about that is he retired and then he came back. And so that concept of like, I'm an athlete, I am retiring from the sport and I can always come back. That was the thing that helped me say goodbye to it. Okay. It's goodbye for now. It could be goodbye forever, but also the door could be open for the future. And so I was able to like really accept that that was part of this process. So I'm retired from owning an agency. I also found the emotions of balancing my babies and my work to be and continues to be very difficult. I work from home. My husband and I switch off with the baby. My toddler's in daycare. So daycare drop off, it is emotional, but my toddler loves daycare. And so it makes it a lot easier. The baby is home, and my husband and I, we pass her back and forth basically outside of our work hours, but I can hear her, and she's a mama's girl. Remember, she wants to be held by mama. So like for the first 2-3 months, she would just cry during the time where I was like, oh, I'm just going to sit at my desk and record the podcast. And then I could hear her crying in the background, and it gutted me. I was like, oh my gosh. So there's so many days where I was supposed to be working and I was just going and holding the baby. And I'm grateful that I could make that decision. And also I found it like the mom guilt was through the charts, not something I experienced with my first kid at all. There are some practical challenges of marketing through a pivot as well. I have been known as a social media manager or agency owner for 10 years. It's the longest job I've ever had. And I still get tagged in posts all the time. I just got tagged in one last week. Someone said they were looking for a social media manager. And I had to politely say, I'm not accepting clients right now because I'm not out yet as a retired agency owner, right? Like I'm still, offboarding my clients out of respect to my clients and my team. I haven't really announced anything yet. And so there is this period of time where it feels a little bit like you have to be quiet about it. And I do feel like this is maybe how like people who are separated or divorced feel, where like people just assume you're still together and you're not. And you have to either make the decision to tell them or pretend like it's still happening. Those are the thoughts that I had. Like I went to a networking event in July, right after I told my team that we're closing down the agency. By September, we will, be no longer working together. It was like a very emotional moment. And then I went to this networking event and people were like, "Oh, how's the business? How's your team?" And I was like, "It's great. I love your shoes." Like quickly changing the subject, right? Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. But I was able to continue marketing my business because of my personal brand, which I'll talk about in a minute. And also, I found that I was able to, like, the challenge of being a personal brand also meant that I felt that dissonance a lot of times of, am I saying the right thing? Okay. I also find that marketing as a marketer adds another level of stress because a lot of people look to marketers for examples of what's possible. Marketers are held to a higher standard than other business owners because we're marketers, so we should know what we're doing more. And so I dealt with all of that, the practicalness of that, as well as going through the pivot. All right, so here's how I did it. Marketing through a pivot. First thing, reflective marketing. I mirror what's happening in my business. And I strongly believe that businesses should take this approach, mirroring what's going on in your business. And I'm not talking about, showing anything you feel uncomfortable with, but sharing the wins, answering the questions, sharing the values of what's happening in your business. This saved me because instead of focusing in on, posting whatever I'm feeling that day, I would simply create content around the questions I was being asked. So here's an example. Someone asked me about link in bio. Is the link in bio on its way out? Does that sound familiar? Oh, right. That was the last episode I recorded. So even though I'm going through this whole pivot and I'm not sure what to talk about on social media, instead of freaking out about it, which is my first instinct, I really focused in on answering questions that people are asking me, reflecting the things that are happening in my business, the questions that people are asking, the general state of social media. So you'll notice, for those of you paying attention, you'll notice over the past 6+ months on my podcast, a lot of the podcast episodes come from what's happening on social media right now. Someone asked me, is Threads worth it? That's a podcast episode. Things like that. So reflective marketing helped save my butt as we're going through this. Second thing that really I encourage people to always have, especially through pivots, is personal brands. I leaned very heavily on my personal brand as I was marketing through a pivot. And I think businesses that don't have personal brands will actually find it much more challenging to pivot their business model and their business without a personal brand. I think ConvertKit is going through this right now. So y'all know ConvertKit, the email marketing tool. Love them. They're rebranding their name from ConvertKit to Kit, and they're adding in a bunch of features and doing some other things. But this is the second time they tried to rebrand. The first time they just changed their name and got backlash, rightfully so. The name choice, if I remember correctly, was insensitive. It was like a cultural word that they had no business using. So they rebranded their name, then had to rebrand back because they're an entity, not a personal brand. And it can be very challenging because there isn't a personal relationship, right? I think someone like Snoop Dogg, I feel so weird saying it so like in such an educated way. Snoop Dogg is doing a fantastic job with his personal brand. I mean, who could have told me 20 years ago that Snoop Dogg would be at the Olympics as a commentator, right? Like, we're all rooting for him, cheering for him as a personal brand. The stuff that he does, we watch, we admire as a personal brand. And I think that when you are going through changes in your business, in your life like this as a personal brand, we connect as humans with other humans in a very different way than we connect with like abstract entities. And so I think that can really help as you're going through a pivot. All right. Next thing, if you're going through a pivot, lean on the credit that you've built up in your business. I have a lot of financial credit in my business, meaning that I had some savings that I could lean on, and I had to lean on as I was having babies. I had a lot of emotional credit that I put into the business. 10 years of building this, and I've also had a lot of karma from this. I've built a lot of relationships. I've given a ton to my community, and so I think that my 10 years of my investment into the business allowed me to be able to coast when I needed to, which was basically this past year. Okay. So, I think that speaks for a lot. That speaks for a lot. So it's not something that we can predict. But I do think that expecting the unexpected and being flexible is a skill that we can learn. Next thing, I leaned into my values. And so one of the things I recommend as business owners, if you do not have company values, write them down. Write them down, study them, live them, breathe them. So for example, one of my values is positive communication. Positive communication to me means that I may over communicate a little bit. I send a lot of emails, I record videos, I tag people when I think, hey, I hope they don't miss this. And I just assume that it's all very helpful until someone tells me otherwise. And so far, that hasn't happened. In fact, someone actually told me the other day that I need to send a few more reminders. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here for it. I can send more reminders. Okay. And so being able to lean into my values really helped me in this entire process. Being able to communicate with my community and in my memberships and go, hey, I just had a baby. So my responses are going to be a little bit slower than normal. That is a value of mine to be able to communicate in that way. I also have a value of fierce integrity. So when I'm making a change to the program, I make a video announcement about it. There will be a change. If you're not okay with this, we will refund you. We will be happy to support you transitioning into another program if that's a better fit. Like, I stand by my values, and I think that's one of the things that helps me be able to pivot through times like this and still be able to, put food on the counter for my family. Okay, so flexibility is a learned skill. Expect the unexpected. Investing in my personal brand has saved me. I don't think faceless brands can do this. And lastly, community is everything. And not just my own community too. I do believe my own community has been amazing through this entire process, especially those of you where I took away a lot of the live sessions beginning of this year, turned them into asynchronous sessions. For about 6-7 months there, we had mostly asynchronous sessions, and now we're back to live sessions. Honestly, live sessions just work better for my personality and for helping my community. But to go through that with everybody, and for them to be able to trust me in testing this out, to me is a testament of how strong my community is, but also being a part of so many other amazing communities. I was in a community with, here's Becky again, Becky Mollenkamp. She connected me with someone who was in her community. We got in a coffee chat, we started talking, and then this person joined my community as well. And to me, that is such a beautiful thing to see because of the power of connection. Another thing that I just love about this community is connecting people to each other. At the retreat, Nikki McKnight and Meg Casebolt just happened to sit next to each other. And then they started talking about romance novels, and they realized they had a lot in common. And now they're hosting a podcast together. And it's one of my favorite podcasts too. Like, I'm so thrilled that I was able to make that connection. And so being a part of other communities, having a community is everything to me. And I think that really supports marketing through a pivot. So am I feeling a lot of feelings about this? Yeah. I mean, I'm happy that I took the time to make this decision. I'm proud of the work that I've done over the past 10 years. I'm excited for the future, and I'm grieving the closure of my agency. Thankfully, I was able to work out some deals, and I'm going to say the word sell my clients, but that doesn't feel quite right. It's not quite what happened here. But for the sake of simplicity, I'll say this. two of my team members were able to continue working with my clients. We worked out a deal. And so the continuation of service is happening for a lot of my clients, which I am beyond grateful for. They're going to go to a good place. They're going to be well taken care of, which made the decision feel a lot better as well. But there is a grieving period, and I'm still grieving the loss of that part of my business. I may pull a Tom Brady and come back in the future, but for now, no services like that for me. So, Andrea, what's next? Well, I am focused on finding my people. People who want, I've been seeing a lot about cozy businesses lately, and I'm so attracted to that business model. Cozy businesses, small businesses. Maggie Patterson just rebranded her podcast about staying solo. Very attracted to that right now as someone who, I'm remaining flexible to be able to be a mom and live my life and also build a business. But a lot of that right now means I can't sit at my desk for, dedicated hours of a day. I kind of have to slot work in around baby nap schedules and daycare drop-offs. So those people, if that resonates with you, you're my people. Thoughtful marketers as well. I am not a fan of hustling and grinding until you die. I am a fan of doing things because they feel really good. I'm a fan of being of service. I'm a fan of, I'm not a fan of like fake timers and sales pages and that sort of thing. And like, I've tried all of that over the years and it never sat right with me. One thing, I didn't have this in my notes, but one thing that really stands out to me is there is a person who I found through a Facebook group. I remember this so distinctly because I was on a webinar that this person was hosting, supposedly, in the chat, commenting away, thinking that it was live and my question just wasn't getting answered. Joined the program, paid way too much. Joined the program. Turns out this person teaches fake webinars and like taught the strategy of the fake webinar and how they set it all up. And I felt bamboozled. And I was like, oh no, I don't ever want to do this. And it's moments like those where I go, man, I don't want to be that kind of person. And I'm still trying to figure out like where my boundaries are. For example, in my funnels, in a couple of my funnels, I do have limited time offers and I do use timers for those, like timers in the emails, timers on the sales page. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as it's truly a limited time offer, I just want it to be for first customers only, right? I don't feel bad about that. But I do feel bad about lying about certain things like fake webinars. That doesn't sit right with me. So I'm trying to find the space between, how do we market our business in a way that's thoughtful and mindful and still uses human psychology in like a very positive way, right? Encouraging action because we all need a little bit of encouragement and it just works. And like, I'm never mad at like a limited time discount or a sale or like a Black Friday deal. I'm here for it. I love it. And so, yeah, it's finding that balance. Anyways, tactically, Savvy Social School is on. I know I kind of pulled back a little bit this year, but honestly, it's my favorite thing to do. And I was looking back through, specifically for the Instagram bootcamp, I was looking back through my notes from last year. And in my bootcamp debrief, I wrote down that the thing that excites me the most is live teaching. I love to get on a call, teach, have someone ask a question, answer their very specific question about their specific scenario, and have them have that like aha light bulb moment. I live for those moments. And so we've redone our schedule. The Savvy Social School is now open and available for people to join us. It'll be permanently open and now. I'm not going to close it down again. At least I don't have plans to. And that's my main thing. Join the Savvy Social School. I also have my mentorship program, which is like Savvy Social Pro. It is the level up for those of you who are professionals, you're marketers or social media managers. And it's a business coaching program. And so that is also my favorite thing. My members in there is a smaller group, but very dedicated to building agencies. And yes, I don't have an agency, but I am no longer a player on the team. I am a coach. And so I get to sit in the coach seat, which is like a different view, right? Bird's eye view of what's going on in your business. And I get to take my 10 years of agency experience and coach and support and strategize with my mentees there. I will be hosting another retreat. I am in the very early stages of planning that. Stay tuned for 2025, as well as I have some other events planned. I love the virtual treat. I'm thinking about a one-day event. I can't say much more other than that. And then I'll continue teaching and speaking as well. I've got 2 in-person events this fall. I've got a couple of virtual events as well that I'm teaching as well. I just love them, love them. So that's what's next for me. What will change in my marketing is that I'm no longer marketing my services. That page is hidden on my website. It's not available. And I am now sending out referrals to social media managers that I know instead. So if you are going through a pivot, if you're thinking about going through a pivot, if you want to like be prepared for a pivot in case that comes your way, I want you to be able to take this episode as inspiration for what's possible and get you a coach or a mentor. Like find an anchor in all of this process. Being able to work with Becky Mollenkamp has been amazing. I know I've mentioned her a couple times now. I am a fan. Like I am fangirling. She's been on the podcast a couple times. I just have found that entire process to be very helpful. And then lastly, I'll leave you with this. Don't get too caught up in what other people think or say, especially on social media. Social media is a lie. There's so many people out here pretending that they know what they're talking about and they don't. So if you need to do what's best for you, do that. As a former people pleaser, I feel like I'm entering into the era of my life where I just don't care as much. And I can't wait until like I really don't give an F. Waiting. I will get there. I still care a lot about what people think, which I think is helpful, but also it held me back for a long time. And so my advice to you is you can do whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. And as long as you understand the consequences, both good and bad of that, do it. Go for it. Anyways, that's the episode for today. I know it's a little bit different, but thank you for tuning in. Coming up next, so I'm going to be talking about rage baiting next week. This is another requested topic. Someone asked me what it is, and I was like, oh, this could be a podcast episode. So I'll talk about it, why it works, why I don't like it, and help you come to your own conclusion if you want to do it in your social media. In the meantime, make sure you rate us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, helps keep us in the top 100 marketing podcasts. Leave a review of the podcast as well. Someone left a review and said they didn't like the sound of my voice. And I was like, you didn't have to say that. You could have just unsubscribed. So let's go ahead and bury that review, please, with some positive ones. And that's all. That's all for today's episode. I will see you next time.